Greetings, sailors, and welcome to me playing the Nelson. Do not adjust your sets. Yes, I have actually been given an early preview of the British battleships. Once upon a time I would have said along with the other community contributors, but of course that's not true anymore. What's happened is Mr. Conway of WGEU basically contacted myself and Jingles and said, we know you're not CCs anymore, but would you like early access anyway? And I debated it because obviously, you know, there was the whole thing that led to us leaving the program in the first place, but on balance I decided it'd be a bit churlish to refuse, and also I do rather want to play with these and see what they're about. So there might be one or two people that are unhappy with that decision, but I mean, I never said I was walking away from wargaming completely, and like there's a pretty good chance I'm going to rejoin the program at this point, given the stuff that I've heard about what's happening internally within WG. Although most of that's been secondhand, I haven't spoken with them directly yet. But you know, things did happen as a result of Foshgate, is the point. And well, I'm going to give it a bit more time. I'm going to wait and see to see how things shake out exactly, but I'm thinking at this point there's probably a fairly decent chance. However, so yeah, it doesn't mean, however, I'm going to get previews of things like the upcoming Tier 8 Japanese premium battleship that's going to come along. This is, you know, just the Royal Navy battleships, and I suspect in part it's because, well, Conway knows both of us, but also we're both British warships YouTubers, and so therefore the Royal Navy battleships will have a significance to us that they may not to an American streamer or YouTuber, for example. So this is the Nelson. This is one they've decided to make a free XP ship, which you probably are already aware of. Initially, there was a tech tree that had this being at Tier 7 with the King George V at Tier 8, and in terms of armour, the KGV is more or less fine at Tier 8, but those 14-inch guns would have been a problem. And the other thing, yeah, I hadn't noticed I didn't have AP loaded yet, although I have to say the HE on this is not bad. That's the thing with the British battleships, is that the HE is actually really good. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked from myself. So what they decided to do was to put this in at Tier 7 rather than try and bump it up and have the guns be buffed beyond what they would have been historically, because the 16-inch guns on this, you know, this was, along with Rodney, the only 16-inch gun battleship in the Royal Navy. They would have had to make the guns rather better in game than they were in real life, because they weren't fantastic guns despite being the biggest guns that the Royal Navy had. So yeah, I think just that and the wonky progression it would have been, you know, going from a 16-inch gun battleship to a 14-inch gun battleship at Tier 8 and then back up to a much bigger number at Tier 9 and 10. That and the configuration as well being so different. I think Wargaming are well aware of the reputation that the Izumo has at Tier 9. Personally, I like the Izumo. I think it's a fine battleship, but not everybody does like it. And there's Dunkirk as well. You know, it's a bit different, but again, not everybody likes it. So they decided to pull this out of the main line and make it a ship that you can get by grinding free XP. The downside of that is, however, it's more expensive than it would be for the equivalent of unlocking a Tier 7 battleship with XP, which is what they did with the Missouri. That's why that's 750,000. This is going to be, instead of it's 200 and something thousand, it would have been 200. I can't remember the exact figure. Somebody figured it out, but it's going to be 275. Or do I mean? No, it is 275, isn't it? Or is it 300? I'm going to have to look that up. I did have that figure noted down, and I've now completely forgotten what it was. So, well done. This is not my first look video, by the way. I should say that. This is me just wanting to get a video out on the Nelson, and this is literally the first game I had in the Nelson. Now, I'm playing here with one of my Patreons, Klingensberg, because I hadn't had a chance to play warships up until that point, and they'd only been on my account about an hour and a half at the time I was playing with him anyway. So I was just checking them out, taking all the screenshots and having a quick look at the stats, but I hadn't actually gotten round to playing any of them yet. So I had basically no real idea how this ship would perform, how the guns would feel. You can look at the stats, and I'll do a first look video on this because I'm particularly I like this ship. I like how this ship looks. I like the Nelsons. I don't know what it is about them, but there's just something about that design that's just, I don't know, it does it for me. Anyway, well, this is going in a strange direction. So, yeah, I'm happy to say that I rather enjoyed it. And there's going to be an interesting comparison to be made with this to the hood as well, because that's also at tier 7. And although in real life these 16-inch guns were not the best performers compared to the hood, even just in, I think maybe, what, 5 battles I've had in the Nelson so far, I've enjoyed it so much more. Now, the hood is a lot faster than this ship. This is slow. It's actually slower than most of, let's see, yeah, most everything but the Colorado, which has that 21 knots. But, I mean, it's only a knot behind the Nagato, so it's not slow. But 24 knots is still fairly slow for a battleship. So that's the biggest difference between this and the hood, and the guns are just so much nicer as well. I mean, overall, the hood probably has greater survivability in terms of the armour, I would say. I mean, this does have a raised citadel. If you get a broadside to somebody, they can spank you. But just the turret configuration on this, and the fact that that third turret is actually forward-facing, unlike the Izumo, you get to use those turrets far more often, and the guns just feel so much nicer to use than the hood's guns. And I've covered this in the past with the talking about the hood, how it basically feels like almost you're playing with the Scharnhorst's guns, even though those are 11-inch guns and the hood's got 15-inch guns, because they just don't perform very well. It's actually interesting to speculate. One of the things they could buff about the hood is to bring the HE on the hood up to par with this, and well, I can't really talk about the KGE, but as I've said, you know, as has been revealed and reported elsewhere, the HE is going to be good on British battleships. So that's something they could do with the hood as well, is buff the HE, which would actually help the hood out a lot, because there are targets, principally German battleships, but some of the other battleships as well. Actually, yes, some of the Japanese battleships, like the Amagi and the Izumo, which obviously you can meet in the hood, they have armour which is problematic. So having good HE damage and a high fire chance would actually be very, very nice on the hood, because at the moment the hood's kind of average with both, but this is very definitely not. In fact, the Nelson has the highest HE fire chance, and I can say that with a certainty because they've told us that while the main British battleship branch is more or less, like, you know, it's still in testing, some things might change, but this is finalised as far as we know. We've been told that the hood stats are as it will be when it gets released, so it has at the moment the highest HE fire chance at tier 7 for a battleship, and it's probably got pretty good pen to go with that as well, but of course I can't look up that figure directly. So I've not done a huge amount so far. I've just been being a bit cautious. I mean, this was actually, it might have been Klingensberg's first game in the Belfast. It's a very recent acquisition for him anyway, so I was suggesting early on that he go into sea and smoke, and as it turned out that was completely unnecessary, because the enemy team all congregated down at A, and they're now starting to push into B, but we've very firmly got, you know, we've got an advantage in numbers, we've got an advantage in points, and we're very firmly in control of this situation. However, this North Carolina is getting a bit close, and so are the rest of the battleships, so, I mean, it would have been nice if we'd been able to kill that destroyer before he got those torps off, but at least I only took one. Now, one of the features you'll note for the Nelson, I mean, the heal amount looks pretty respectable at the moment, but it's going to be even more respectable in a moment, but it's got a very, very good heal. This is going to be one of the things, is they will have that Warspite heal. Anyway, so I couldn't figure out if this North Carolina was going to ram me or not. Doesn't look like he is though, but I don't particularly want to go broadside, so I'm really hoping I can load first, and as it turns out, I just beat him to the pip. He gets one gun off at me, but I, at this point-blank range, am able to just basically wipe him out the water. So, yeah, I have posted that on Twitter already and on Reddit as well, so if you've seen that particular moment, yes, that's where it comes from. So the secondaries are opening up on this other North Carolina. The secondaries on this are actually not bad, you know, despite it being this configuration. Unlike the Dunkirk, where the secondaries are only really useful if you've got shots, you know, if they've got shots to the side or if something's directly behind you. That's not true in the Nelson at all. You've actually got quite a nice couple of secondary turrets on the side there, and you've got some more secondaries around the back, and they're on the what would you call that, like the widest part across the ship? I don't know. I want to call it the hips, which is obviously the proper naval terminology, but yeah, they can fire forward, at least a little bit, and the range is not terrible. It's, I think, a 5-kilometer base range. It's a mix of HE and AP, though. You've got some 120mm HE secondaries, and then you've got the twin turret 152 mils, which I believe are AP. So you've got some 6-inch secondaries there, which is pretty respectable. So yeah, those with a 5-inch range. A 5-kilometer range is like difference there. Yeah, they are not bad actually. You know, it's not anything to the secondaries that you get on the German battleships, but it's still, you know, it's a nice package. This, it doesn't do too badly in any one regard, and some people might still find it awkward because of that turret arrangement, but compared to the Dunkirk, it's far less squashy, even if it's far slower. And it also doesn't have the rear-facing third turret on the Izumo, which is so often out of commission because it so often has to turn all the way around. So, yeah, I'm liking this ship so far. I mean, this is just early impressions, really early impressions after only a couple of battles. But that 650,000+ free XP that I'm sitting on at the moment, steadily accumulating towards getting the Missouri, I might well splurge and get a Nelson first, because I don't really need a Missouri. I know people like it, but I've got plenty of premium ships already, and this is part of the rationale as well for putting in the Nelson, is that Wargaming have, I mean, it was probably always their plan to add more free XP ships, but Wargaming have decided that, you know, it being lower tier and therefore cheaper, even though a bit more expensive than it would be for unlocking a tier 7 with a regular tier 7 with free XP, you know, it's still a more attainable goal than the Missouri, which is quite a lot of free XP to get. You know, it's taken me a lot of months to get to that 650,000, but with the premium account, with flags, with camos, you know, it doesn't take that long to stack up. So, damage-wise, I mean, that was a pretty good first game. A lot of it came from getting in close, though, and you saw how much I could heal. It's not a particularly... like, the armor's pretty good, but it's not survivable in the same way that the Germans are survivable because of that really good armor and being hard to citadel. It's more because it's got that heal. And there are going to be situations when you don't particularly want to turn away, that you will end up surviving in that you just wouldn't in a Dunkirk or even in an Izumo with much better armor. The one big downside is, however, that you don't have any kind of float plane or fighter to work with, just like the Hood, and you don't have Hydro either. So short of captain skills, in terms of picking up destroyers, you're kind of reliant on other players, essentially. There really is only the vigilance skill to pick up torpedoes that little bit earlier. So that's the Nelson. I really like it so far. I actually would recommend this over the Hood, just based on this first impression. I mean, it's not that the Hood's a bad ship, it's just that I think the Hood is too often a frustrating ship, even though it can come good in the end. But Hood, I mean, I can count on one hand the number of damage games, over 100k damage games that I've had in the Hood, whereas, you know, that was the first one out the gate with the Nelson, and it was quite satisfying. So yeah, it's fun. My initial impression is it's fun, and I'm going to enjoy this, and I always was, I think, more interested specifically in the Nelson than any of the other individual ships, and now it's going to be a premium that I can just get right away with the free XP that I've got. Yeah, I suspect I'll be grabbing one of these sooner rather than later. Anyway, so there will be a proper first impressions video, a first look video where I run down the stats in the Nelson when I've played it a bit more. I'm not sure what I'm doing with the main branch of the battleships. I'll probably do more of a first impressions for those and maybe not do a full stats thing because I don't know how long I've got to play them exactly. We'll see. I mean, I've guessed all along. It's been my estimation that they would come out with Gamescom, and that seems to be the case. And it wasn't exactly a terribly hard guess to make because that's exactly what they did with the German battleships as well. So in a way it's nice to be right about it, but I'm not going to get big-headed because, you know, it was a really obvious guess. But that gives me, you know, a little bit of time to work with them. It's just other people's videos will probably get there first because there's a fair few ships to get through, and I really want to try and get to grips with these. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, so that's the Nelson. Very first impressions. I like it. I like it a lot. Anyway, hopefully you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.